What's the emphasis that you place on return to play guys, and what's the protocols behind that?
So we've got a rough idea of like obviously where their training loads at because we've tracked the RPEs right way through. So obviously we've got a few guys where we've got our GPS metrics, so we can use that to know where they need to get to. But we know roughly for each player, we'll know what they're returning for. We know it's a double day, so like it usually be like a Friday afternoon where they would lift and then rugby, and then like a Saturday they would rugby in the morning, rugby in the afternoon. So we know like they need to go 3 days back to back with like a few lifting sessions in there. Even if you just look at a real easiest figure of like how many minutes training, that we know what we need to have guys prepared for. So we've got a guy currently who trains with me on a Tuesday morning where he does gym, and then we just kind of had not so much a restructure or reshape of this, but more of an emphasis on the physical development of players. But that's what we will say. We're still in the place now where it's almost like rugby and S&C are like colliding. So, for example, we've got a kind of scenario where rugby are saying like, look, we need these guys more physically developed by the time they get to under 20s level, because at under 20s level we struggle to compete with bigger nations, which is fair. But then we've also got scenarios where we've got under 16s playing like 2 games a week, and it's like, well, they're playing 2 games a week, when are they going to train? Like, if you want them to be better at this point, like, we understand they need to play rugby, and that's an important part, but there also needs to be a physical development part as well. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, we've had like a kind of structure, like I say, towards having like the under 20s and what's called the Pro Academy.
Hello and welcome back to PA Truck Up. Today we've got one of my old coaches, Dave. How you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing good, Manny. How are you?
I'm good. So if you just give us a little introduction on who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. So my name is David Cowan. I currently have 2 jobs. So one of which is my own business, which is Revamp Performance. So that is looking at providing strength and conditioning to all rugby players. So just focusing on rugby players throughout the world, really, through an online kind of platform. And that coincides pretty well with my day job, which is working with Scottish Rugby in the academy setup. So we primarily work with under 18 players, looking to get them playing national under 18s and then progressing up to under 20s and then hopefully into the professional game as well. So that's kind of where my two what takes my time up.
Nice. So how was your progression from sort of getting from your own business to then SRU?
Yeah, so my kind of journey through was a little bit different. It was one I remember at the time, like almost stressing out because no one had went my path before. Like I'd listened to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and no one ever told a story similar to mine. So you almost get that imposter syndrome and that self doubt where you're like, can this actually be done? So it's pretty cool. Like I was saying to you prior to the call, like this was my dream job, and I've managed to get my dream job, and it's awesome now that I'm here. Like I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So like my journey through it's like basically when I left school, wasn't sure what to do, was just kind of working different jobs, selling toilets and a plumber's merchant was where it hit its biggest low. I remember just sitting out in a car park. I'd got a scratch card, and I was like, if I won this scratch card, what would I actually do with my life? And I was like, I would train, and I would train people. And I was like, well, why don't I just do that without winning the scratch card? So that was like what took me first down that route. So originally, I kind of thought like I would train my mates that play rugby, and I would train for my rugby. And then I kind of went down probably the traditional sort of route when you start looking at the fitness and stuff, and like the gym instructor and PT route. So got qualified in that. So this is all whilst like having a family and stuff at home. So I was always working alongside that. And then got into PT and just like it wasn't for me, wasn't enjoying it, wasn't what I'd hoped for. And then it kind of triggered, like it made sense that actually this wasn't what I wanted. It was to work specifically with athletes. Like that was what was driving me. So yeah, I started looking into that, and then that's when I kind of realised, like, look, I'm going to have to go down the sort of traditional route of getting a degree. And so this is what scared me, is that like I've got a family, I've got a mortgage at this time. Like I can't go and intern for free for 6 months. Like that's not an option for me. So I'd done my degree through Open University, so it took me 6 years to get my bachelor's because it was part time. Because then I also worked at times part time, at times full time on top of that. It was tough. It was real tough, and it was like I say, it was kind of when you're sort of from the outside looking in, all you hear is like you need to go and intern, you need to go and do this and that, and I was like, I can't do that. So the way I kind of built myself up was by obviously doing my degree in my spare time whilst working, and then like volunteering as much as I can at the local rugby club. And then went into the high school and done like the local hockey club. Just like anyone who would let me get a hold of their players, I would just do that. I would go in there and I would just work with them and make a ton of mistakes. Like the development officer at the time here in Hoyk, like he was excellent. He let me come in and kind of oversee what he does, and then at times he would let me take over. And then that kind of curiosity for like different environments and stuff took me to the SRU, the Scottish Rugby Union, where I'd done the same thing. Like I went in and shadowed, and the way I kind of seen it was I can't go and do a 6 month internship or however long.
Mm.
But in this 6 years, if I spend a few hours every week volunteering, I like build my own internship, and that's the kind of route I went down. So yeah, that's kind of where I got to. Like so, at this point, I was working as a postie actually, so my calves were looking
Jacked.
yeah. So I was walking like 12 miles a day or something, so like kept me pretty busy. So I just used to plug in a podcast and just walk and listen and learn whilst doing my day job. So that was a pretty cool benefit. But anyway, the opportunity came up to leave the Royal Mail or leave the post office to go and cover a role within Scottish Rugby with the view of then interviewing for that role and presumably getting that role because I'd been covering that job. So I took that big jump. Well, the whole family did, not just me. Like my wife supported me with that as well, which was like it's quite a big thing. So yeah, like jumped into that, kind of put myself vulnerable a little bit, and then what happened is someone else came in and they took that job. So I was left with no job, and yeah, things got pretty rough. So then I was still on board with Scottish Rugby as a contractor, so not as a full time employee. So I had a little bit of hours with them, and then they managed to be fair, they tried to help me out, and they put me in touch with the college where I met you, where they kind of put me in a coaching role there, helping out with the sports performance program within the college. So again, just got me some more coaching hours. So with that, I managed to build myself up to like 20 hours a week worth of work, albeit self-employed. And then COVID hit and everything went back downhill again. So those hours dried up. Obviously, no contract, so there was no obligation to keep paying the money. So no money from that is an aside. But because of the timing that I'd left my previous job and the fact that I'd been self-employed for several years, just in a small percentage, I basically didn't qualify for any government support like whatsoever. So like through those months of COVID, like again got pretty rough. Like we were on food banks and stuff. Like again, coming back to this, like got a family, got a mortgage. I have no idea how we were going to get through this, but we did. So then during COVID, that was when the Riva performance stuff started up because that was when it kind of became like I can't be relying on other people all the time. Like I need to have something that if it all goes wrong, I've got something to fall back on. So that's where like the Riva performance stuff started up, and again, like made a ton of mistakes alongside that with probably being too wide with my net, not being niche enough with who I was wanting to work with. I just wanted to work with anyone, and to an extent, I still do. Like obviously, when you get into coaching, you want to help whoever wants help. But then I suppose it's just about refining down into your expertise. Like my expertise is within rugby athletes because that's the background I know. It's a sport I played. It's a sport I've always worked in. It's not to say that I couldn't go into another sport, but like that's what I'm good at. So let's be really really good at that rather than trying to be kind of please everyone. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then after kind of COVID, we went back to work at Borders College. So this time as a lecturer, not just a coach. So again, just sort of learning on the job with that, teaching and coaching, you could argue, are pretty similar. So I was like a duck on water with that, as in on the top I looked calm, and underneath I was going like this, like panicking, because I definitely didn't feel well prepared. And then the opportunity came up within Scottish Rugby to go into the academy role, which I'm currently in now, and I absolutely love it. So like I say, working with under 18 players, also lead the national under 16s program. So that's real cool to have a different perspective, kind of looking at growth and maturation, and trying to have that conversation with like rugby coaches of, yes, this guy is, for example, the tallest now, but he's actually done all his growing, and this kid that you're overlooking, he is going to grow up even taller than him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who we want to be focusing on if we're looking at a second row, which for anyone who doesn't know, within rugby is like the person who gets lifted up in the line out. So you usually want someone pretty tall, kind of similar to like a basketball player, so they can get up and reach for the ball, So it's been cool stuff like that. So that was a long old description of how we got to here, Manny.
No, but I think that's important as well, because like there's so many different pathways that you can take to become an S&C coach. Like there's not just one way. Like you go the uni route and that's it. Like for me, I didn't start until I was a bit later on, and I hated the job at Oregon.
Yeah.
I was working at Oregon, hated it. I got sacked, and I always say like that was the best day of my life.
Yeah.
When I got sacked from there, because then I went straight to the college and applied to do it.
Yeah.
Then I'm here now.
I
So
suppose, that's the other thing. Like I would have been 24 when I started my degree, so I knew that like I was going to be 30 by the time I even qualified. So again, like I was a kind of late starter to similar to yourself. So it's I think it's good to have those stories out there so that other people know, like, actually, you don't need to know what you want to do when you're 18 when you're in school. That's pretty tough. You need to go out there and make some mistakes and get some experience, and then be like, this is what I want to do.
100%. And like some people that I went to uni with, at least, they've graduated now and they're doing nothing related to
That's pretty common.
strength and conditioning or sports science. Yeah. So it's not just a thing that you do. Like you do have to know what you want to do and how you like see yourself going forward with it. In terms of like the pathways that you've sort of taken, what was the biggest challenge for you through it all?
So I think definitely like trying to balance that. One, balance like the work life stuff, and also just not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like not sure if it's actually going to come. Like sort of obviously there could have been a situation where I went my 6 years through my degree and I was still in the same situation where I was like just kind of contracting hours, and like I was working with the local rugby team. I'd worked with them for about 6 years. I've just finished there this year, so I was able to kind of build up my practice with them as well. But there was like no guarantee that I was going to get to where I wanted to get. So I think being appreciative of that, like now that I'm here, it's pretty awesome. It's cool to have like, always feels like you're living on a bit of a dreamland day. Like this is what I'd always wanted, and actually the hard work's paid off, and it's got me to where I want to be.
Yeah.
Cool.
So how does that feel then, going through all these hardships and then finally coming off on the better end?
It was tough, man. Like I can admit that there was times where I thought like I'm going to have to stop this. Like I need to stop my degree. Like struggling with time. Like this is a pipe dream and it's not going to pay off. So like as we got kind of closer to getting my degree, I'd have been working part time. But again, like working part time plus studying part time, trying to pay a mortgage and raise a family. Like it got to the point where it's like, look, I just need to get a grip here, give myself a shake, and just go get a full time job somewhere and like in a different field and support my family that way. Like the feeling of now being able to support my family and be there for them whilst doing a job that I love. Like it's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah. I mean, I've sort of had glimpses on these little steps, and like I think I was getting coached while you were at uni. You were doing your UKSCA. You were working at the SRU and at the college.
Yeah.
And like for me, I've always thought of like, how is he managing all of this?
Caffeine really helps. It's useful.
I remember when I was sort of interning for a little while across there. I think it was 2017.
Right.
I must have interned there, and we were playing that hoop and sandbag game for who gets the coffees.
Yeah. To be fair,
I was like,
there's less coffee games now, which is a sad thing. We did progress up to cricket for coffees, but
"Oh, really?"
hopefully the landlord won't listen to this one. But yeah. There's a couple who
Nah,
were like, "Nah, I think you'll find they were here when we got here."
they were just magically grew. Um, so, what kind of philosophies and principles do you implement with now the program that you're in?
Yeah, so we've just kind of had not so much a restructure or reshape of this, but more of an emphasis on the physical development of players. But that's what we'll say. We're still in the place now where it's almost like rugby and S&C are like colliding. So, for example,
Mm,
we've got a kind of scenario where rugby are saying like, look, we need these guys more physically developed by the time they get to under 20s level, because at under 20s level we struggle to compete with bigger nations, which is fair. But then we've also got scenarios where we've got under 16s playing like 2 games a week, and it's like, well, if they're playing 2 games a week, when are they going to train? Like, if you want them
mm,
to be better at this point, like we understand they need to play rugby, and that's an important part, but there also needs to be a physical development part as well. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, we've had like a kind of structure, like I say, towards having like the under 20s and what's called the Pro Academy. So they're aligned to the two professional teams in Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Um, so the kind of those in the under 20s sit at the same level, and then we're all about at our level now in the academies is preparing the guys to take that step up. So certainly under 18s is when it becomes like a performance focus, bearing in mind like some of these guys training ages will be maybe 3 years, so it's nothing fancy. With like it is
mm,
just still implementing the basics. And then and with like our under 16s program again, it's you'll have seen similar ones when you were helping interns. It's literally teaching them the fundamentals, so that by the time they hit that under 17s year, they're ready to train. Um, so ideally, we would like to be able to start working with kids a little bit earlier, so that even at that under 16s age, we
mm,
can start to, again, not so much training for performance, like with a real emphasis on load, because movement always has to come first. There's plenty of coaches, clubs, schools who will show you what they can do by loading up 14-year-olds. And I had one coach come in and speak to me, and he was asking me for some guidance on his program. I was like, yeah, cool. And then he was like, oh, so this is all their 1 rep maxes. And I was like, right, okay. What age is this again? He's like, yeah, it's under 15s. I was like, yeah, okay. Here's maybe the first thing we've done is we probably don't need to be doing 1 rep maxes with under 15s.
yeah.
Yeah, you're always going to run into that. Where you just really want those guys at that time to be putting that movement first foundation in, and then we can start to layer stuff on top. And obviously, this is speaking about gym work, but it's also the on the pitch stuff. So, as in looking at our speed and our plyometrics, it's just having some kind of exposure to that, just some kind of base layer, so that we can just keep layering on and on and on. And then by the time that they get into an under 20s environment, like they've got a training age of like 4 or 5 years, they're still
Mm.
like should be fairly strong by this point, should be movement competent. Then they can start to look at the fancy stuff.
Yeah. So, what's your movement competency tests like, and how do you develop them from there?
Um, so again, it's all just kind of so the fundamental movements we use, which aren't any secret to any sport, are our push pull, hinge, squat, and then we've got brace and rotate. Those are the kind of ones that, as an SRU, like as a kind of curriculum we use, is like we want to get guys to this point. So at like this time, the under 16s, by the time they've finished that under 16s year, we want them to be fully confident in all these, competent in all these, so that we can start to load those up. Come that kind of under 17s year. In terms of like movement assessments, we don't use an FMS or anything. It is
Mm.
very much so the way that the academies are set up is you've got 4 regions, with different coaches in each one. So we're all kind of working towards the same thing, but every environment's different, so everyone needs to kind of go through their same stuff. So we've just got like an in-house, like a red, amber, green of like basic movements, so bodyweight squat, goblet squat, zombie squat, or hands-free front squat, both the same thing. Into your overhead squat, things like that. Just basically try to tick as many boxes as we can, so that we're like, yeah, like this kid's a good mover. He can move across all planes, all different movements, unilaterally, bilaterally. Like he's ready to go and start to train properly.
This is something that I've been sort of interested in, and it's a Rob Anderson's got this like, perfect model of how he coaches under all ages. How much of that do you implement into your training? Because I know he was there beforehand,
Yeah, so
and
he
he sort
was,
of
yeah, yeah. No, so like Rob is class. Like he's taught me so much about just kind of that youth development space. So I'm constantly pestering him now that I'm doing the national 16 stuff with that growth and maturation, because he's like, I would see him as an expert of that. I don't know if he would agree, but like I think
100%,
like I think he's good,
100%.
especially he's not like just the science guy. Like he's got the practice as well. So yeah, like we've used some of that stuff. So I know he used to use like the Dan Baker kind of model around body weight testing. So basically, once you've scored a certain amount of points, that's when you're saying like, yeah, this kid's strong enough to move on to do like proper kind of strength training. I would imagine that he's going to refine that to his own scenario now. I need to catch up with Rob. Actually, I've got that on my list of things to do this week, is to try and catch up with him, because I want to go and pick his brains and steal some of his ideas. Is the other part. So like under 16s. So as much as that's super important, because those are the guys coming through in 4 or 5 years' time to hopefully play like under 20s and then longer than that into the national team. But our main focus as an academy is academy supported players. So each region's got 35, and they'll all tend to fall in the under 18, under 17 bracket. So the way that that's again something I'm working towards just now, is almost just like my mind works in flow charts and like simple progressions. So it's like, right, I want to know that once this guy's at this point, they then move into this, and then once they've done that, this is the passing criteria. Then they move into this. So that's currently kind of what I'm working through just now. So maybe if we catch up in a few months' time, I can then.
I would love to.
This is what I want to see, and this is what like the progression I want to see the guys follow on. Because just now it's sort of still just piecing bits together.
So how do you then interact with sort of the coaches at that level, and how does the S&C tie into that?
So yeah, we've got a pretty good relationship with them, to be fair. Like they trust us to do our job. They'll tell us things we're noticing. Tends to be the same things that we're noticing. In terms of like strength movements, or like, yeah, this guy like really struggles with like he's not powerful off one leg. It's like, yeah, fine, we've noticed that as well. There's been some. You always get some different perspectives and ways you don't think of things. Like I know we spoke about one player, and I was said to the rugby, like, look, what do you see as his limiting factor? And he was like, it's his ability to change height. And I was like, what? Like, that's kind of like a quite strange thing to say. I thought, like, I couldn't really understand what he meant, but he just sort of spoke about as the player was running, when he had to dip height to make a tackle, like he really struggles with that. I was like, right, okay, fair enough. So we kind of just went round a way of sort of one. I think it was more kind of like a sport specific thing, in terms of like a reaction to a stimulus, like he's maybe not understanding well enough what he's looking at to know to change direction at, like earlier or at the right time, and then looked at like our kind of single leg stuff, and to make sure that he's got the movement qualities that he's able to change direction, which he did, but it's just also making sure he's strong and comfortable in those positions, and and playing around with like foot placement, so that he has to experience producing force in a variety of different positions. So you sometimes get cool kind of interactions with that, like ways you don't think. In terms of the growth and maturation stuff, like the coaches that we're working with currently are pretty good. But it's like the coaches underneath that are working in the club game. Those are the ones that can maybe get those get a little bit more work done with. That's something I'd like to see kind of progressing forward. So in rugby, we've got no, if you look at maturation status, in the current under-16 squad, we've got no late developers. So there's kids out there playing rugby who are going to get their growth spurt later, but they've not been identified as good rugby players. So they may come through, or we may lose them from the game. So I think that's something we need to get better at, because rugby is, I mean, all sports, but rugby especially because it's a contact sport, is guilty of going for that kid's massive. Let's get him in. He could just be massive because we've got one guy who's an 18, a bio age of 18, playing for the under 16s. So he's an 18-year-old man, you could argue, playing against 15-year-old boys. So no wonder he looks like he's class. So it's we've spoken around different stuff around. Obviously, they use bio age in football. It's not as easy to do in rugby with it being a contact sport, but that's certainly something we're looking at. And then hopefully, it's just trying to compare apples with apples, because you can compare apples with pears, and then even within those apples, you've got a different variety of apples. So it's just so multifactorial. So yeah, that's where my head keeps going, trying to get down that kind of.
Yeah. What would be your ideal way of getting those players? If there was like an ideal world.
Yeah, so that's what I'm struggling with, Manny. That's what I don't know. If I knew that, I would be probably a lot better, more well off. Yeah, that's what we're trying to work with. There's a few of us kind of working with it. Like, look, how do we pick up these guys? Basically, how do we keep them in programs and keep them playing the sport before they've kind of matured? Because it might be that like they just get fed up of getting battered by bigger kids all the time, and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to go and do something else. I'm going to go play football, or we might lose some guys who are going to be 6'8" because they go and play basketball because they're a late developer and they're fed up of getting knocked about. It's it needs to go earlier. I think the education needs to get out there earlier to club coaches, but then so it'll be originally the club coaches that put their players forward for like regional stuff, which is then when the national stuff gets picked. So I suppose it's if we've got an awareness of like this kid's actually like on par with everyone else, but he's a late developer, so let's keep him in the program. He's a late developer. Let's keep him in the program because he has got something there, but we just need to give him a little bit more time. So you see it more in football, where obviously it's been a professional sport for longer, but they've got guys who have came through as late developers, like guys playing at the very top, because they've been managed correctly. There's the other part of it is just around those kind of growth spurts. Is like, oh yeah, that kid's tall, but like he can't get around the park. But that kid's maybe had a massive growth spurt and he's trying to work a new body, and he's like, you see it all the time, guys who are all arms and legs, and they don't know how to move. So it's again giving coaches an awareness of that. Like, but yeah, what's his like rugby knowledge? Like, what's his interest? Like, because we can work on the movement stuff if that's all it is.
I think that's actually a really important thing to get S&C introduced early on.
Yeah,
because like the better your movement efficiency is, when you do hit these growth spurts and you shoot up. Unfortunately, I didn't. I'm vertically challenged.
We'll still get we'll get there, Manny. We're late developers, don't worry. We will get to 6'5". I know it.
Okay. But like you've got better chances of getting in terms with like your core balance is there, so you're less awkward in movement. That's what like I found when I hit my little growth spurt, is like because I had been in S&C from such an early age. Like Rocky started as, I think I was 13.
Yeah.
When I hit that growth spurt, I was a little bit more comfortable with my sort of limbs and limb length. And like I think most of my year were the same.
Like that's something that again, kind of more. If you split Scottish Rugby into two, you've kind of got like the community game side and the performance side, which is the side I'm in. But that is trying to feed across into that community side. And I know I've done like I used to take my son's mini rugby, which is like they're under, well, it'd been in primary one, so what, like 6-year-old or something. And like that was something I was like real big on, is like in the warm up, like getting them doing duck walks. So they're like squatting and walking around in a squat, and then you get them making duck noises, and then you get to get them doing a crab thing, and then you ask them to make a crab noise, and they'll look at you like, "What noise is a crab make?" They go, "Close attention." You're like, "Yeah, that's fine, that'll do." I'm not got anything to say against that. And then like getting them to do kangaroo hops around, so they're doing plyometrics, but you're not lining them up and doing plyometrics, or getting them to squat on the spot. You're getting them to do it through games and stuff. We've done that with the national 16s when we were just going through a general warm up. So we had like one guy holding onto the heels, so like a wheelbarrow, and then the person who was in that sort of press up position, like they had their feet elevated, hands on the ground. They had a bib in the back of their shorts, so did everyone else. So they were like walking around wheelbarrow race and then try to reach out and pull the kind of tail out of the player. But it was just like looking at that shoulder stability and being able to extend out, and but just like through fun, like rather than getting right, guys, we're going to get some TheraBand set up and we're going to do some shoulder stability work. Like, let's actually have a bit of fun. And you don't actually realise that we're training you and we're improving your movement competencies without actually, like keeping it fun. Because everyone wants big kids, even when you get to adult level, they always want to play games and stuff.
100%. I still want to play games.
Cat and mouse, get tailing someone's back and chasing them about. It's great fun.
So how do you manage the S&C? You previously mentioned that you do have sort of 2 games and then you're trying to find the S&C in there. How do you manage that, and what is your current plan for that?
So with that particular group, so again, that's kind of more looking at, for the most part, that's like our younger group, which is under 16. So they kind of would be part of what you'd call like the pathway, where they're sort of on the outside almost, and we just kind of do what we can for them. Like, it's our academy supported guys who we're a bit more focused on. So we would probably try and prevent as much as possible those 2 game weeks. Obviously, there's times where it is going to happen, and then from there you just have to work around it and just make sure that you're kind of tracking how many full sessions they're doing across the period of a month, so that we can say to rugby at the end of the month, like, look, you're saying this guy's not physically ready, but he's only done 2 full gym sessions this month because he's playing so much rugby. Like, something has to give. You either have to give that he's not going to physically develop, or he's going to have to drop out of some of these games so that we can actually get after him. So, like, just a kind of real life example is we're kind of coming into selection period now for the under 18 Six Nations. So that's kind of happens just post Christmas. So those guys who are under 17 who have missed that, like, that's the conversations we're having now. Like, look, do we just not pull the guys from rugby because they're rugby players and they have to be able to play rugby, but do we limit what we can limit and get after a real physical development block with these guys, so that when we get to the summer, when they transition into under 18s, they're like ready to go, and they're ready to go rugby heavy then, because we've put some ground, like a real strong base of training in there.
Yeah. So with them being kids as well, like, the holidays play a big factor into when they're actually coming in.
Yeah.
How have you found managing their schedules with that and then still getting them in for physical prep?
So I go against S&C 101, and I never plan deloads because they tend to happen. Certainly when you look at those younger groups, guys end up missing because they're on holiday with family, or because they're ill, and like, or they've got a school commitment or something like that. Like, tend to stay away from deloads with them because they just need to get some training in, and they tend to be fairly sporadic. With those younger groups, with the older kind of group, like if we're looking more at our academy players, our under 17 and under 18s, again, it's they're quite lucky in that they get a little bit of support around performance lifestyle, so that we can almost zoom in on when their busy periods are going to be. And we obviously stress is stress. Like, it doesn't care what kind of stress it is. So, like, we've got guys who, some of which are at one of our kind of school partners, that are like going for exams to like Oxford, so one of the top unis in the country. So, like, it's been a real, their stress bucket is up to here, so I'm not going to go in and train these guys really hard at this point. It's like, look, let's just keep ticking over as much as we can, and then once this stress bucket comes down, because your uni stuff's done, like, we can start to fill up with what we need to fill up. So it's very much just kind of case by case. Like, different guys are in different scenarios. Some are working, some are high school, some are like doing college courses. So it's very much case by case, just trying to sort of see the priorities physically, rugby wise, but also personally. So, does this guy want to play for Scotland, or does this guy want to be a doctor? So we need to weigh up like what's going to be more important for this kid.
Yeah. It's also looking at that life after
Yeah,
rugby, essentially.
yeah, 100%. Like again, like I think that's something we've been pretty good at is trying to provide guys opportunities. So we've got a guy who's coming now and he's coaching with us. Because he's not been able to take that next step quite yet. Like, not to say that it won't happen, but it's like, look, like we really appreciate what you've done. Like, we want to keep you involved here. There's always like an after plan thing. I think that's something that people can throw at any academy, ourselves included, being that they just sort of pick people up and then throw them to the side. But I think that's something that we're pretty good at of trying to set people up and not allowing them to they just put all their eggs in one basket. But then the other part of it, like some kids don't want to hear it. Some kids, you could be telling them, like, look, you really need to be sticking in with your college course, for example, because this might not work out and you might need something else. But they're like, nah, don't want to do that. I just want to play rugby. Right? But even like the guys at the top of the game have got something else that they're working towards or should be. But yeah, when you work with teenage boys, it's not always. Sometimes you just have to pick your battles.
Yeah. So what's the load management methods that you go through when they do have like life stresses and you're still managing their stress in the gym?
So the way we kind of load manage would be like around your basic like RPE. So as an actual training load, we would use that just to kind of keep track of things. We have got a couple of GPS units, which is nice and makes me feel all sports sciencey, but unfortunately we've not got a ton of them. And I'm not sure how good the ones we've got. They're pretty old now.
It's Carapol usually, isn't it?
Player Tech, yeah, which is a version of Apple. But yeah, they're pretty old now, so it's fine. It's all good. It's all good. We've got, to be fair, we've got 20 units, but we've only got 3 that work, so that's a problem. So that's kind of how we would monitor our training load, and then in terms of like the overall stress thing, like obviously guys aren't putting in their exams in their training load, so that's when we'll just use like a real simple like, wellness questionnaire. We use Team Builder is what we house our programs on, so it's really easy just to put a kind of a quiz on there, which then collates all the data and flags up if anyone's like sometimes it's just a conversation starter. It's just like you can have a look at it and not even go up and say, "Oh, I see your wellness is down. What's wrong?" It's kind of just like, "Oh, how are you today?" Like sometimes you need to pry a little bit deeper and like, "Yeah, I'm good." Like, "Oh yeah, like what's going on?" And then you might get a little bit out, and it just has to be kind of again case by case. I would love to be in a scenario where it's done for us through like velocity based training and things like that, which we have got a gym aware, which I did use yesterday. And the kid was below his prescribed like kind of 1 rep max or where he should have been because we were using the VBT stuff. Very cool. But then we always, with all the programs, certainly the ones that I do, we use percentages as a guide, but then have like the reps in reserve there and try and be on top of that. Like, look, at the end of this, you should feel like there's 2 reps left in the tank. To hopefully allow them to kind of self-regulate where they should be at. It's hard because I put those percentages in, so I went through a phase of not putting them in because I just wanted to go purely off of reps in reserve. But then you find yourself, it's like that Goldilocks where some kids are going too heavy, some kids are going too light, some kids are getting it just right. Or an S&C version of Goldilocks. It's been a while since I've read the book. So yeah, never put in the kind of the reps as a guidance. The percentages as a guidance. So it's like, nah, you don't need to be. You can squat 150. You don't need to be doing 3s at 80 kilos. Like you need to go up a bit, son. Unless he's having a real bad day. But yeah, so yeah.
You actually had something quite that I learned a lot from, and you sort of had the open door rule, where like the S&C suite is like on one side of the building, but your offices are on the other.
Yeah.
But you just keep that door open just in case any players want to sort of come in and chat. Yeah. How important has that been for you?
So that's something we miss. So as I said, like the time you're speaking when you interned, we would have been working with the under-20s players. So it was guys a little bit older. they were like staying in the flats next door. It might have been like they were kind of college students or whatever, and they had more free time to pop in and have a chat and have a coffee and stuff like that. That was a real valuable thing that I think we'd done better than a lot of kind of academies. Just purely down to like the environment we were in, that it was like right on their doorstep. So now we're working with a lot of more kind of high school kids, so our contact time with them is a lot less. So they'll kind of just get in and go like straight to gym, then straight out to rugby. So you're almost like having to build those relationships on the fly. Whereas like that's something we've said where we miss. So this is only just kind of transitioned the start of this season where we've went younger with our academy players, because they start academy where the guys from 18 to 20 will then go there, and we're purely under 18s. Because like a Friday we used to have gym, then rugby, and then the boys would come up and sit and have a coffee, and we would watch some highlights from the game at the weekend, and that was real good for just getting to know players and making players feel comfortable and happy to come and chat to you about stuff. But as you get to kind of know your players, you sort of know how they tend to normally interact, and then you can usually, if you're aware enough, you can usually spot when someone's not quite acting right, and then you can kind of go and have a word and see what's up. Sometimes it's just a teenage boy being a teenage boy.
What's some of the sort of philosophies and principles that you like put into your programs?
So it's always that movement first. It has to be that movement first, and then we're just trying different ways of just getting guys comfortable with pushing themselves on. So that's one thing that we've. So me and Fordy, we've went full West Side. We've not went full West Side. We've not got our 18s on like with bands and planes and stuff like that. But what I mean is, like when we watch you've seen the documentary on Netflix about West Side, yeah. What's it called? Is it West Side for Life or something like that?
Pretty sure it is.
So, yeah, when they were like, can you swear on this one, Manny?
Yeah.
Excellent. So when the West Side guys walked in, all the other powerlifters were like, oh, fuck, West Side's here. Like, that's it. Day over. That's what we want our guys to give when we go to like national testing. Like, oh, fuck, the borders are here. Like, this is going to be the long. So that's kind of what we're trying to develop within our kind of culture, if you like, in the gym. And the way we're doing that is by making our big fish realize where they sit in the bigger ocean rather than just the little pond of the borders. So just because you're the strongest in our gym doesn't mean you're the strongest in the whole academy. So we're quite lucky, again, in that we all work under Scottish Rugby, which is different to if you were down in England and working for one of the pro clubs. It's sort of, you would know your club and that's kind of it, whereas we get to see everything. So we can say to guys, like, that player up in Caledonia that you're competing against, like, he's squatting more than you. Why is that? He's not squatting more than me. It's like, I can show you, he's squatting more than you. So we can try and drive that culture. So yeah, like movement first, and then using a bit of competition to try and drive boys on and get them to sort of reach wherever they want to reach. So we've just went through a player review process just now, and it's been pretty cool because we've been able to sit and speak to the guys and be like, look, what at the end of a year is a success for you, and then what at the end of 10 years is a success for you? Because we just almost come in and presume like, oh, these guys all want to play for Scotland and then go play for the British Lions and be a pro rugby player. But like one of the kids was like, oh, I don't really know. It's like, well, that's something you need to think about. Like, we will help you get to wherever you want to go, but we need to know where you want to go first, which means you need to know where you want to go. So I think that's real important to know how to push guys on. You need to know, they need to know, and then you need to know what they want first.
What kind of culture have you sort of built across there?
So yeah, like I say, it's just kind of one that's based on, we're trying to build one that's based on like competition and hard work. We need our guys to show up, and then when they show up, they're there to work hard. Like, we've not got any words on the wall or anything like that. We've kind of chatted through, like, do we have like slogan, if you like, or anything like that. But, we're not there yet, but it's so the one we used to have was the leave your mark. So we had the paw, which was the kind of the bulldog, which was the Borders bulldog, and the thing was that leave your mark. Like I suppose it's similar to what will be around with a lot of them, like leave the place in a better place when you got here, kind of thing. Like raise the bar, like push the standard higher, like make everyone chase you. That's kind of where we're at. Is just trying to, like I say, push ourselves on so that people are like, oh no, Borders are here.
Nice. I rate that though.
We're definitely not there yet.
Nah, but the thing is, like you've said, you're just at the initial starting block.
Yeah.
So it's not going to click on like straight away. Like it needs time to develop and grow.
Yeah, that's it. And then, as like I say, like you've just kind of alluded to there, this is a new program, if you like, in that it's younger. So we've not got the guys hanging around. So we had a cool experience in the summer where we had the guys who were with us last year who went onto the pro teams or the pro academy come back down and train with us. And then our guys in the gym were looking around like, holy shit, like we're quite far off of where we need to be. Like you had scrum half squatting, or so smaller guys would be your scrum half, like squatting more than like your bigger guys, like your props, and the props are kind of looking like, oh shit, like I need to put myself together a little bit here. So yeah, like we've not got that in place because it's been a new program. Like other than that sort of one exposure, we've not got that sort of that precedent set. Whereas next year we've got guys who've been in the program for a year, so that when our current under 16s come through as 17s, they can see the boys working and like, holy shit, like that's where I need to get to. Like I want to have that much weight in the bar. Like I'm just getting let go here. Like they've built me up. My movement's class. Not that they're going to think that because they just want to lift heavy stuff, but we know that their movement's class and they can just let them go and try and get competitive and start to not so much chase numbers, but there's an element of that in it. Like I don't think we should shy away from the fact that as S&C coaches, we want people to be stronger, faster, bigger. Like, let's not get too fluffy with it. Like, that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Like, weak things break. We don't want weak things.
But I think I've had this discussion with some. I use this word very lightly. Some S&C coaches who disagree with the board on the wall, and like you sort of put your numbers up there.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that. It's something that can be unhealthy, but it's also a good way to keep a track on where everyone is and where everyone started.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going out for sort of that type of environment where it's starting to get elite and you're starting to get like you want to make that national team, you want to make these big teams, you kind of want to look at the person that you're up against.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, yeah, in here, I'm stronger. Now, it might not translate to the pitch, but at least they've got that confidence coming in that they know that they can push through it.
I suppose when you kind of asked previously around like principles or of a program, like mine's has always been giving someone the potential to be a better player. Like I'm not going to guarantee that by making you stronger and faster, I've made you a better player, but I've gave you more tools that if your playing ability is good enough, like you should be able to do it to a better standard. Like, that's always the way I've kind of seen it.
100%.
It's just giving people that potential.
And I think as well, like this was one of the biggest things that Rocky taught me is like just be confident in the gym because that confidence will transfer over.
Yeah.
And like you might not be the best player, but if you've got confidence that your body can hold up to these stressing factors, then you can sort of you know you can do them.
Yeah. I think like not that we're going through like full mental toughness and whatever. Definitely putting into that training.
David Cowan styles.
Yeah, but just like having a bit of grit, and boys need to know how to work hard and having the confidence in yourself. Like I know I can push myself, and I'll work harder than him, so I'm going to beat him. Like that's what we're getting after. That's what we're sort of trying to drive for our guys.
Well, when I was under your program, you made me do. You forced me to do. You didn't really.
I know it's.
But you made me do that conditioning circuit, and by fuck, I was just like, I think it was 22 minutes 22
That's
minutes.
the one on the watt bike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that if that's what you do to get your players grittier.
that's made a few people question their life choices. That one. Myself included.
But like, I mean,
Like, this is barbaric. I can't believe I made anyone do this.
so 2 points. I think it's really important to go through these conditioning circuits because it shows you. Coach AJ, who's someone that I was under in America, he showed me that a the dark side of conditioning you need to experience.
Yeah,
Because like if you go through the dark side of conditioning or just lifting or life in general, and you've done these conditioning circuits, you know you can make out and you can win.
yeah,
Like until you've experienced that hardship, you can't.
yeah.
And then two, it just gives you a better reserve. I always say that the season is won in preseason,
Mm,
and I'll always stick with that.
yeah. It's one in pre-season, and then being able to carry that kind of almost the consistency through. You're laying the foundations in pre-season, and then you're expecting the guys to have seen the value for that and to have like went into the first game and felt fucking good. So they're like, yeah, I'm
Mm,
still going to keep doing this. And then again, you just keep like layering that on year after year. Um, yeah, that would be that's the end goal in a way, is to get these guys to realize like how much S&C can help them develop. And I think we're lucky that in rugby it's quite an S&C. It's almost like your American
mm,
football where it's pretty ingrained in the culture. I would imagine it's tougher if you go into like a football or a soccer club to sort of see to try and bring that culture in there. I reckon that would be a little bit harder. You've kind of almost already got that buy-in with rugby, where
mm,
you're almost trying to pull the guys back because they might have came from one of these under 15 programs where their coach had them doing a 1 rep max squat. And they come in and tell you, oh, I can squat 120. And I'm like, well, no, not really. You've got a little bit of a quarter squat. Good morning
mm,
at 120 there, but let's strip that back. So quite often that's one thing. Certainly with those younger groups, you have to have your head in a swivel because you're like,
mm,
that kid definitely shouldn't be lifting that much weight. And it's again back to your Goldilocks. The RDLs are like the worst lift in the world, where it's like three guys working together. And so, well, I'm not loading the bar up. I'll always do the same. So you've got one guy who can hardly lift it, one guy is too easy, and one guy is just right. It's pretty tough
yeah.
to be on top of stuff like that.
How do you manage these sort of rotations with you've got three people in the rack?
Yeah, it just tends to be like, so we've not got, so we currently work out of a CrossFit gym.
Mm,
You'll know that we used to, or when you work at Try Fitness, that we sometimes work in there, but trying to manage, like last week we had like 35 players in at one time to two coaches, which wasn't, like, it's not good.
God damn.
No one died, so that was pretty good, but you can't be coaching at your best in that kind of environment. That's something I think we could do better at. And I suppose it's just, again, it's almost similar to what we're speaking about the conditioning stuff, but slightly different, where you have to fuck up to then realize that, oh, actually, like that didn't work. Having 35 kids in all doing different programs, because we had some 17s, some 18s, like, and then
Mm,
15s were at the same time. So you tend to focus on the 16s because they're more likely to kill themselves. So you try and avoid that where possible. But then that means you're kind of neglecting the guys who you're supposed to be kind of paying the most attention to. So yeah, anyway, it's something I think that we could probably get a little bit better at. Like, there's talk of us getting our own place, and when that's the case, like I see it working a lot better, and that we can have a real kind of session flow, like session structure.
mm,
You might have those same 35 boys in, but you've split them into groups where, like, it's a staggered start. Like, I don't know if you follow much of Mike Boyle stuff, but I know he speaks about it. He's almost got his gyms like a factory floor where they come in and the first bit they get to is the warm up area, and then they go onto the track, and then they go into the racks, and then they go into the dumbbells, and then they're out the door. And it's like,
yeah.
almost like it flows right the way around. That's kind of where I would see. So you could have like sort of 15-minute rotation. So you've got like a coach taking them through some movement prep, and then they go into some plyos and speed work, and you've got another group working on the core lifts in the squat racks, and then you've got the dumbbell stuff, and then you're out the door again. So yeah, that's something we kind of struggle with a little bit. in the facility we're at, like the CrossFit gym we've been at, have been class for letting us go in and use it. And obviously, you know, a CrossFit gym, or most people listening will know what a CrossFit gym is kind of set up like. There's barbells and there's squat racks, but then when you go into more of your like accessory work, that's when you start to struggle.
Mm.
And it's certainly, if you're having like a squat day or a day where everyone's squatting, like you can quite quickly run out of plates and stuff, and it becomes a bit of a ball ache that way. But yeah, I would see a kind of scenario where we're able to structure it a bit better, like having designated sessions, like in sort of 15-minute
Mm.
chunks, and managing our numbers that way, rather than where we're kind of currently
Yeah, how does your conditioning fit with all the schedules?
at. For the most part, we're trying to get a conditioner through rugby. Um,
Mm.
so again, pretty good with the coaches in that we can push games where we're going after a certain quality, some like a certain kind of energy system development. Like, look, let's make these games like 45 seconds, but like the ball doesn't go down. If it does, like there's a new ball straight in, like they're go go go, and then we take the
Mm.
recovery time after that, or like even more like a longer, like, look, let's play for 4 minutes and then give them like a couple of minutes off, try and get it in through that, rather than going like off feet conditioning. But then there's always a time and a place, so obviously use off feet conditioning all the time with guys if they're coming back from injuries, just for that energy system development. And then there's obviously like the local kind of um, robustness that we have to go after. So like we have seen, like, look, we've seen our guys, they just need running distance in there to be able to cope to go in a training environment. So we've seen them do some pretty boring shit of like straight line running, like up and down the
Mm-hmm.
lines of the pitch, because it just needs to be done at times. We can't always go in with doing everything through games. Certainly, especially if guys are at a scenario where they can do straight line running, but they can't do like unpredicted change of direction. Like there's a time and the place for getting after guys on the walk bike, but then having to just get some distance in their legs.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's part of being or wanting to be a professional player, and that's where it comes back to that stuff around the review. Like, what do you
Mm-hmm.
want? Because if you want to get to here, this is the steps you need to put in place. If you only want to get to here, then look, this is maybe not where you need to be at. Like,
Yeah. What's the emphasis that you place on return to play guys, and what's the protocols behind that?
so we've got a rough idea of like obviously where their training loads at, because we've tracked the RPEs the right way through.
Mm.
So we usually got it's not a perfect measure by any means, but it's one that you can do en masse fairly easy, as long as you can get teenage boys to do what they're told, which is probably not that easy all the time.
Hard.
So obviously we've got a few guys where we've got our GPS metrics, so we can use that to know where they need to get to. But we know roughly for each player, we'll know what they're returning for. Like, are they returning to play club rugby? Are they returning to go to international rugby? And again, because we've got that kind of close connection that we're all under the one roof, we know if guys are going into under 18s camp, we know what we would expect to see. That, like, we know it's a double day.
Mm.
So like it usually be like a Friday afternoon where they would lift and then rugby, and then like a Saturday they would rugby in the morning, rugby in the afternoon, and a Sunday would tend to be like a rugby and a lift, and then away. So we know like they need to go 3 days back to back with like a few lifting sessions in there. So we know what we need to prepare those guys for, and we know the kind of distances and the session duration. Like, even if you just look at a real easy figure of like how many minutes training, like we know what we need to have guys prepared for. And so it's just kind of try to figure that out as best we can. Again, it's case by case. That could be when you're having to. So we've got a guy currently who trains with me on a Tuesday morning, where he does gym and then a little bit of rugby, and then in the afternoon he goes back to his club and does like off feet conditioning just to get that experience,
Mm.
double day in there, so that we can then prepare him best possible for going into like his 18s camps and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
a case by case, and just having an awareness of starting at the end, and then let's just work our way back, like figure it out that way, kind of reverse engineer it.
Yeah. That makes sense. With I know that SRU and most rugby sort of countries are putting a big emphasis is the concussion protocols and how that all measures up. How do you deal with concussions, and how do you sort of progress your players through it?
So that would the majority, well, all of that would be kind of handled medically. So we just sort of get the guys when at the right time for getting them. It's certainly been a massive focus. I know they have just kind of changed the protocol slightly around what we do, and part of that is just kind of what we've already been speaking about. Is what we found is certainly with under 18s, like they're extra for a good reason, like extra cautious around that. And if you have so many within a year, like it's a kind of almost like a doubled return time before you're back. So you could have a guy missing like a month, 6 weeks of training whilst he's recovering from concussion. But the issue with that is if it's 6 weeks complete rest, like that chronic load is gone, and then you're then wanting that guy to be playing 2 weeks later because he's out his concussion protocol and say, well, this guy's got zero training load, so like that's not a possibility. So they have looked at changing that to kind of allow more of what we are speaking about earlier of that low level stuff, like even if it is just non-strenuous like lifting and like fairly easy aerobic work just to get some mileage in, some kind of energy system work so that they're not totally starting from scratch. That's been a kind of way that they've refined the concussion protocol that we use just now. But I think I really should know it off by heart. Hopefully, no one listens to it. But I think it's like 21 days is kind of like what they look at for like an under 18 before they're back into it. Again, if it's been multiple concussions that extent.
Yeah. How have you sort of found the progression through these concussion protocols developed over the years?
So yeah, it's definitely like so much more of a focus now. Like it's 100% is like we definitely live by the if in doubt, sit them out part of it, which I don't think would have been the case. Maybe not so much in the academy. Obviously, I've only been there for 2 years, so I would imagine they always were as strict on it. But you'll know yourself playing club rugby and youth rugby, take a ding to the head and you'd be all right, you'd be fine. Like I've done it myself, playing under 18s. Like I remember getting concussed and thinking, nah, like it's fine. I'll keep playing through it because you just don't know any better. Whereas now, I think it's been such a big emphasis throughout all of the sport all across the world, where it is like a case of, nah, you're coming off.
Yeah.
Like
I remember when I was playing under 17, under 18s, we used to play Saturday, Sunday games
yeah,
back to back.
yeah.
I'd get concussed on the Saturday, play on the Sunday, and it was just, that was normal. And I was like, now looking back, I was like, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's definitely there's none of that going on now, that's for sure. But yeah, I can remember speaking to guys like obviously we're from pretty much the same area, and some guys would play like 3 games in a weekend. They'd play for like the school, and they'd play for the under 18s, and they'd play the next day for the under 16s. And it's crazy to think like again we don't find ourselves in those scenarios now, but it's just crazy to think that at some point someone thought that was a good idea. But
100%.
hindsight's wonderful, isn't it?
How's your training going? I know you do quite a lot of MMA style training now.
Yeah, I'm on a weight cut just now, and it is fucking awful.
I'm guessing you've got competition soon.
Yeah, a week so on the 18th of November, so probably a few days after this comes out. So
See, what's funny is now you know why I was crabby some of the times you were coaching me.
yeah, well, so I've decided to go down a weight category. So what
Right.
happened was I started off at 97, and I was like, when I get down to 91, I will look like Ronnie Coleman. So I got down to 91, and I still look like a bag of six. So I was like, right, tell you what, if I get to 85, I will look like Ronnie Coleman. So I'm currently sitting at 88, and I don't look like Ronnie Coleman yet. But once I've dropped those 3 kilos, I'd imagine I'll look like Ronnie Coleman. That's how
Fair.
it's working out.
How have you found the training style differ?
As Class A, I absolutely love it. I think one of the big things for me that I've found is it's just been awesome to throw myself into a hobby which I know nothing about. So obviously, prior to that, my only hobby was really the gym, and at that point, you sort of, I think I know what I'm doing. And then, but if you're in training with people, like they're asking you questions, and you almost become coaching whilst you're training, and I'm sure people listening will have had plenty of the same kind of experiences. Whereas this was me going in with no knowledge and no one had an expectation of me of having that knowledge.
Mm.
I could just go in as a complete beginner and just learn again. And then I think training in like a martial art, the one big thing I've noticed is like the ability to switch on and off. Because obviously, if you're there training and you're not paying attention, like you're getting choked or you're getting punched in the
Mm.
face. So you need to be totally focused on what's standing in front of you. Um, which I've found like I've then been able to take into my own life. Like I've noticed a massive difference, just like in family life, of being able to switch off when I'm finished work, not think about
Mm.
it all the time, and then when I'm back to work, like I'm on again. Like I've found that switch to be so much easier to just kind of go and like go on and off.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the big thing I've noticed between doing the two, MMA and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it sort of teaches you like, well, for me, anyways, it was like I can be a lot calmer in high stress situations.
Yeah, because you're not getting choked. Yeah,
But it's also like knowing when you can sort of sit back and let them do a little bit, so then you can get into a better
yeah.
position.
Yeah, I was thinking about this other day as well. That I was like, these guys I'm training with, like, so I'll be bigger than most of them. But I've just sort of thought about these times where I've tapped them. Like, if I hadn't tapped, like, they actually could have just killed me. So there's been a few times. It keeps you humble because you're like, yeah,
It does.
I could have been killed several times if they decided not to let go of that because I could do nothing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you are at the mercy of your training partner at that point.
Yeah. I think it makes, not that I was ever an aggressive person whatsoever, but it definitely makes you realise that you could get your ass kicked by anyone.
100%. How have you have implemented S&C into your training?
So, like my personal training,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I use a coach. Um, I've just fed up of trying to do my own programs. So now I pay someone to do programs for me because, funnily enough, coaching is quite important and having a coach
Mm-hmm.
is an important thing. So, yeah, I've got a coach guy, James DeLacy, who used to work in rugby as well. So it's pretty cool. He,
I always say that
science of
coaches need coaches.
yeah, and it's been class because again, like I've done more of that kind of off-feet conditioning than I've ever done because I would never program that for myself. So yeah, now I have to actually stay on top of it because I'm held accountable by someone else. So,
Yeah.
um,
What kind of principles does he use on you?
so it's kind of more like a group program. It's not like a one-to-one.
Mm.
It's Sweet Science of Fighting. It's called. So he's got different programs based on like what your sport is. So there's one in there for judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and then MMA. So I've just kind of been plodding along with the MMA. The jiu-jitsu one. Just now it's in a competition block where we've been doing some clusters and stuff, just kind of getting that max strength just before the comp. It's been pretty cool because it's nothing I've played about with it to an extent, but it's just been a play about it. It's not been part of like the kind of bigger picture. So it's been pretty cool
Yeah.
to see a different perspective and almost different ways that different people do stuff. Like I've used some of what he's done with me to the players that I get to work with as well.
Yeah. Have you tried?
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say like that's the other part with like when we speak about the difference that like doing a different sport has made is the kind of the carryover as well for obviously that
Mm.
contact side is pretty important when it comes to rugby and being able to dominate like your opposition. You're not always going to be bigger than them, so it's been quite cool to chuck little drills in, even if it's just like a
Mm-hmm.
contact prep warm up where you've got guys like got them in a seatbelt. The only thing you find is they've got their studs on and they end up scraping studs down inside of their legs, but that toughens them up anyway, man. So it's fine.
I've still got scars. No, that was the question I was about to ask. How transferable have you sort of implemented the wrestling, jiu-jitsu into the rugby?
Yeah, so it's been through that kind of contact prep stuff, and then we've also used it. So in the off season where we're trying to maybe put mass on guys, so we're not trying to burn a ton of calories and get them. That's when that distance and mileage side of things, like we reduce the running volume massively.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's maybe when we'll increase that kind of contact conditioning stuff. So we'll do like little wrestling circuits, just teaching the guys like the basics so that they won't kill each other, but then
Mm.
sort of letting them go. Quite often we'll go from the knees just to avoid anything crazy happening where someone plants their leg and gets their leg snapped in two,
Get folded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like, or even just like things like being in a kind of a pancake position, or if you're going jiu-jitsu, would be like side control, where like, right, I just want you to hold him for as long as you can, and I want you to get up, and then it's just watching the guys kind of go at it, and maybe doing that on a like a 21-10 off or a 30-on-30 off sort of thing, just giving them a little conditioning
Yeah.
hit, but without getting that mass amount of running volume in. If we're chasing after other qualities at that time.
Yeah. What would be a piece of advice that you'd give new strength and conditioning coaches coming in?
Um, I think it would be kind of what we alluded to at the start, is that even if the path isn't right in front of you, no one's tread it before, doesn't mean that you'll not be able to get there. I think if the will and the want is enough, and if it's something that's really important to you and that you really want to do, like 100% think you go with it. I think it's like I've already said, I've managed to get to my dream job and I absolutely love it. I think it's such a um, rewarding job to be in, and I would encourage anyone that's willing to stick it out
Mhm.
to do it. Because we need more good coaches. Like everyone could do with a coach, like you said before. So there's people out there that are looking for it. So it's just like stay course and get after it. Reach out to your network. Reach out to people to try and help. Like I'm more than happy to speak to people and help people out. I know yourself will be the same. Like it's a pretty, for the most part, it's a pretty open
Mm.
in a field where people will share best practice and yeah, most people, if they're in coaching, it's because they want to help people. So that includes coaches.
100%. I think like obviously do your research on the coach first, but most of the coaches that I've reached out to during my time, and even now when I'm trying to get people onto the podcast, I'll do some research and speak to them for a little bit. And everyone's so nice and replying, and they'll give a bit of their 2 cents as well.
Yeah, everyone's been in the same situation. That's it. And people don't forget that. So I know what it was like coming up and not really knowing what I didn't know. We've still got plenty to learn now. Like I still reach out to people for advice. And yeah, like we've all been in that situation, and people just want to help each other out and hopefully keep growing the kind of the field as it is.
100%. Do you want to plug your socials and websites
Yeah,
for everyone to
so
reach out?
everything is pretty much Reaver Performance. So we've not spoke about that an awful lot, but that's my business where we train rugby players specifically through the Train Heroic app. So that's Reaver Performance on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on anything else because I'm too old. And then the other one would probably be LinkedIn would be a good place to get me. Certainly for work related stuff. Um, my Instagram tends to just be sharing stories of me at jiu-jitsu class. And it's pretty boring. My Reaver performance Instagram could do with being updated more regularly, but it's one of the things when you're trying to. That's one of my struggles is try to balance both the full time job and the business stuff. It just kind of keeps ticking away. Yeah, there I am. So yeah, LinkedIn. I'm always happy to catch up with people on that.
Yeah, I would love to have you back on as well when you get all the chinks.
Yeah, yeah, no, that'd be cool. I'd be happy to come on and share it if I'm allowed. If not, I'll give you a very similar one, but I'll just change the badge from Scottish Rugby to Reaver Performance.
Fair, fair.
It's my long term athlete development.
Yeah, I read that. No, thank you so much for coming on, Dave, and reach out to him. He's coached me. I think that was one of the strongest I've ever been because you had me doing some pretty mental loading systems.
Yeah, the old APRE. You can speak about that on
Yeah,
the next one. That's a good one. I like that.
I would like that. APRE. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
Dave.
you, man.
Always a pleasure.
Catch up, mate.